The worst death in the Bible, the woman who was eaten by dogs, Jezebel. Some stories in the Bible shake you to the core, but few are as shocking as this one. Imagine a queen so ruthless, so corrupt, that even her death became a prophecy fulfilled in the most brutal way possible. We're talking about Jezebel, the woman who defied God, manipulated kings, and built an empire on idolatry, only to end up as food for dogs. Yes, you read that right. Not a poetic downfall, not a quiet end, but a judgment so terrifying that it still sends shivers down spines today. But here's the real question. Why did this happen? What made Jezebel's fate so extreme? Was it just about her wickedness, or was there something deeper at play? And more importantly, what warning does her story hold for us today? Because let's be real, power without God is dangerous, and history keeps proving it. Leaders rise, empires fall, and those who think they're above divine justice always learn the hard way. Jezebel thought she was untouchable. She ruled Israel with an iron grip, silenced her enemies, and laughed in the face of prophecy. But when God's judgment came knocking, no wealth, no manipulation, no royal title could save her. What happened next wasn't just a gruesome ending, it was a message, loud and clear, a message that still speaks to us today. So, are you ready to uncover the chilling truth behind the worst death in the Bible? The worst death in the Bible, the woman who was eaten by dogs, Jezebel. Some stories in the Bible shake you to the core, but few are as shocking as this one. Imagine a queen so ruthless, so corrupt, that even her death became a prophecy fulfilled in the most brutal way possible. We're talking about Jezebel, the woman who defied God, manipulated kings, and built an empire on idolatry, only to end up as food for dogs. Yes, you read that right. Not a poetic downfall, not a quiet end, but a judgment so terrifying that it still sends shivers down spines today. But here's the real question. Why did this happen? What made Jezebel's fate so extreme? Was it just about her wickedness, or was there something deeper at play? And more importantly, what warning does her story hold for us today? Because let's be real, power without God is dangerous, and history keeps proving it. Leaders rise, empires fall, and those who think they're above divine justice always learn the hard way. Jezebel thought she was untouchable. She ruled Israel with an iron grip, silenced her enemies, and laughed in the face of prophecy. But when God's judgment came knocking, no wealth, no manipulation, no royal title could save her. What happened next wasn't just a gruesome ending, it was a message, loud and clear, a message that still speaks to us today. So, are you ready to uncover the chilling truth behind the worst death in the Bible? Jezebel wasn't just any queen. She was the epitome of power without limits, a woman who bent an entire kingdom to her will. With a mind sharper than a double-edged sword, she dominated Israel not just through her husband, King Ahab, but through a web of manipulation and fear. She wasn't content with being queen. She wanted control, and worse, she achieved it. Her story isn't just about royalty, it's about what happens when ambition is fueled by corruption, turning influence into a weapon rather than a blessing. She wasn't born into Israel's faith, and frankly, she didn't care about it. Daughter of a pagan king, she carried with her the gods of her homeland, imposing them on a nation meant to worship only one true God. Imagine a leader today replacing every fundamental value of a country overnight. That's exactly what Jezebel did. She turned idolatry into law, silencing anyone who opposed her. Her power wasn't just political, it was spiritual warfare, and the worst part, she did it all with a smile, convinced she was untouchable. But no one defies divine justice forever. Jezebel's wickedness wasn't just about false gods, it was about corruption in its purest form. She orchestrated murders, destroyed prophets, and ruled through intimidation. Israel, once a nation built on God's promises, was drowning in spiritual apostasy under her reign. She played a dangerous game, thinking she could rewrite the rules of heaven itself. But what happens when someone believes they are more powerful than the God of Israel? Well, let's just say judgment doesn't knock, it crashes through the door. Jezebel didn't just promote idolatry, she made it the law of the land. She manipulated King Ahab like a master puppeteer, pushing him to replace the worship of God with the rituals of Baal. This wasn't just politics, it was a spiritual takeover. Imagine walking through Israel in those days. Altars to false gods on every corner, prophets of God hunted down, and fear ruling the people. Ahab, weak-willed and eager to please his wife, let her dictate the nation's fate. But when leaders abandon truth for power, destruction isn't far behind. Her defiance wasn't subtle. It was a direct challenge to God himself. She personally ensured that Baal's priests thrived while silencing anyone who spoke in God's name. Prophets were executed, worshippers of Yahweh forced into hiding, and the kingdom of Israel, once chosen by God, was drowning in spiritual rebellion. But here's the thing, no amount of manipulation can change divine truth. The more she tried to erase God's presence, the more she invited his judgment. And God's justice doesn't operate on human timelines. It moves like a storm, slow at first, but unstoppable. Then came the drought, a punishment that shook Israel to its core. No rain, no crops, no life. Jezebel's gods, silent, her priests, powerless. Yet she refused to repent, doubling down on her war against God. Ahab may have started this corruption, but Jezebel fueled it with fire. She thought she was winning, that her gods were greater. But what happens when a prophet of the true God walks into the heart of this rebellion, ready to call down fire from heaven? Well, that's where things get really interesting. Then came Elijah, the man who didn't fear kings, queens, or armies. He was one prophet against an empire, yet he stood like a warrior, armed with nothing but faith. While Jezebel spread her idolatry like a plague, Elijah confronted it head-on. He challenged the prophets of Baal to a showdown on Mount Carmel, a spiritual battlefield where truth would be tested by fire. The stakes? Israel's soul. Imagine the scene. Hundreds of Baal's prophets chanting, cutting themselves, calling on their God, while Elijah, standing alone, waited. No theatrics, no desperation, just unshakable confidence in the God of Israel. For hours, Baal's prophets cried out, but nothing happened. Their God was as silent as the idols they worshipped, and Elijah, he couldn't resist mocking them. Maybe Baal is asleep, maybe he's busy. His words cut deeper than their self-inflicted wounds. Then, when it was his turn, he did the unthinkable. He drenched the altar in water, making it impossible to burn. No tricks, no hidden flames, and when he prayed, fire fell from heaven, consuming everything. The people of Israel fell to their knees, realizing the truth. There was only one God. But Jezebel, oh, she wasn't about to let this go unpunished. When news of Baal's humiliation reached her, she exploded in fury. She swore to kill Elijah, sending assassins after him. But here's the irony. This woman who ruled through fear now feared a single man. Her power was slipping, her control cracking. Elijah had exposed her gods as frauds, and deep down she knew it. But instead of surrendering to the truth, she doubled down on her wickedness. And when someone refuses to acknowledge their downfall, their destruction is only a matter of time. Jezebel's days were numbered, and divine judgment was already at her door. Jezebel's story isn't just ancient history. It's a mirror reflecting the dangers of unchecked power and rebellion against God. How many leaders today build their empires on deceit, thinking they're untouchable? How many people chase influence at any cost, believing they can outrun justice? Jezebel had everything, wealth, authority, control, but it all crumbled. Why? Because power without God is like a palace built on sand. It looks impressive for a time, but when the storm of divine judgment comes, it collapses without mercy. Her downfall wasn't random. It was the result of years of defying the very one who holds true power. And here's where it gets personal. Jezebel's spirit isn't just about a queen from the Old Testament. It's an attitude, a mindset, a way of life that still exists today. It's in the person who manipulates to get ahead, the leader who suppresses truth for personal gain, the individual who refuses to submit to what is right. But history and the Bible make one thing clear. Wickedness may thrive for a season, but it never lasts. Maybe you've seen this in your own life. People who seemed untouchable, who played the system, who crushed others under their feet. But in the end, where are they now? This story isn't just about Jezebel, it's about the choices we make. Will we follow the path of integrity, even when it's hard? Or will we take shortcuts, thinking we can rewrite the rules? The warning is right here. When we turn our backs on God, we set ourselves up for a fall. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but eventually. The good news? There's always a way back. Unlike Jezebel, we have the chance to change, to choose a different path, to break free from deception before it's too late. The question is, will we take it? Jezebel had built her empire on manipulation, but even the most ruthless rulers fall. Years passed, and her grip on Israel weakened. A new king, Jehu, was anointed, and he had one mission: wipe out Ahab's legacy. He rode into Jezreel like a storm, his chariots thundering toward the palace. Jezebel, ever the queen, refused to show fear. She painted her eyes, dressed in royal robes, and stood defiantly at the window. Maybe she thought she could charm him, like she had Ahab. Maybe she believed her power still meant something. But Jehu wasn't a man to be swayed by seduction. Her own servants, those she had ruled over with an iron fist, were the ones who betrayed her. At Jehu's command, they threw her from the palace window. She plummeted to the ground, her blood splattering the walls of the very kingdom she had corrupted. But her story didn't end there. As Jehu went inside to feast, the dogs outside began their own meal. When he finally ordered her burial, it was too late. The prophecy had come true. There was almost nothing left of Jezebel but bones. A queen, who once demanded worship, had become nothing more than food for scavengers. Jezebel's death wasn't just brutal, it was a symbol. She had spent her life defying God. But in the end, she couldn't escape his judgment. Power without God is a ticking time bomb, and hers had finally exploded. Her story is a warning for every leader, every influencer, every person who thinks they can manipulate their way through life without consequences. For a while, it may seem like corruption wins, like deception pays off. But sooner or later, divine justice knocks on the door. And when it does, it doesn't ask permission to enter. Jezebel's story isn't just a history lesson, it's a wake-up call. Power, wealth, and influence mean nothing when they're built on deception, idolatry, and rebellion against God. She thought she could manipulate her way to the top, silence the truth, and rewrite the rules. But divine justice doesn't work that way. Sooner or later, every action has consequences. And if a queen couldn't escape God's judgment, what makes anyone else think they can? Now, let's make this personal. Are there Jezebel-like traits creeping into your life? A refusal to listen to truth? A desire for control at any cost? A habit of justifying actions you know are wrong? Be honest, because the worst deception isn't fooling others, it's fooling yourself. Jezebel's fate wasn't just about her, it was a warning. And the Bible is clear. Wickedness may thrive for a while, but God's justice always prevails. So the question is, will you learn from her story or repeat it? If this made you think, don't stop here. There's so much more to uncover. In the Bible, stories of power, prophecy, and divine intervention that will change how you see the world. Subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and keep learning. Because trust me, the Bible isn't just a book, it's the most powerful truth you'll ever read.